Welcome into Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with CPA and personal financial specialist, Phil Putney. Now let's get rolling with today's show. Hey everybody, welcome into the Labor Day edition of Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts. 2020 Labor Day is upon us, almost at the time we're dropping this podcast. Phil, What's going on, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing great.
Well, we got a fun show lined up this week. We're going to do, we got some financial rules. And before you click it off or whatever the case is, these are kind of fun. So are these rules legit or full of it? If you know what I'm saying. Full of bull, so full of bull. So we'll have some fun. We'll make this short and sweet. We'll just get right into them and have a good time with these. The 10% rule, what is it? And do you think it's legit?
So 10%, how much should you be saving for retirement? It's a good place to start, If you can't figure anything else out, start there if it's comfortable. Or even if it's a little bit uncomfortable, it usually means it's the right number where you got to stretch yourself just a little bit. But yeah, it's a great place to start, So I would say, yeah, it's legit. For those that are older in retirement, it really depends. Where are you at? How much have you accumulated? Are you trying to make up for lost years, so to speak, because maybe you put the kids through school and, now you don't have that expense and you're trying to put significantly more away? That's great, but if you're younger, just starting out, at least it's a great place to start. So,
all right. So that one's basically legit. Again, time sensitive a little bit, depending on where you're at in life. A lovely 4% rule, Phil. Everybody's heard this one, but tell us what it is and what do you think? Is it full of it or is it legit?
Yeah, well, so this relates to how much of my portfolio could I spend each year without running out of money? And it's, I would say, kind of full of bull right now. In fact, there was not too many years ago, they actually redid the analysis again and said, really closer to like 2.8, I think is what they said, or 8.5 at that point, well, 3%, call it. Mm-hmm. And the reason is number one, interest rates on bonds are down. Right now we're, one of the lowest points again in interest rates. And then kind of that forward-looking projection of what the equity market looks like over the next 10 years isn't really good either. So with those two components playing in, I think 4% is probably on the high side.
Well, and you have people say stuff like, okay, if you had $1 million, we'll do this for easy math.
Yep.
4%, you're pulling out $40,000 a year. What happens, in March of 2020 when it goes down 30%? Okay, so now you're down to $700,000 and you're pulling 4% off of that.
Right. So now you've taken a pay cut.
Yeah.
A 30% pay cut, basically,
Yeah.
And that's the other piece of it too. If you're just truly using that as a guideline in retirement, I'm only taking 4% of my account out.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to be all over the place. There's going to be great years and there's going to be other years, So again, to me, it's one of those rules of thumb.
All right. Here's another one for you. I haven't heard this one before, so I'll be curious to tell us what this one is. The 25X rule.
So how much do you need to have accumulated to retire? So 25 times your income, or what you want as an income, maybe.
If you make $100,000, 2.5 million?
2.5 million, yeah. Which, is probably going to blow some people away thinking, what are you talking about? I'll never get there.
Yeah.
But if you think backwards, it's kind of the opposite of that old 4% rule, right? Because, if you're trying to get that $100,000 to 2.5 million, 2.5 million at 4% gives you $100,000. So if you want to replace your income today, that's at 4% what you need to get there.
A little interchangeable there.
The reverse of that.
Yeah.
Again, it's a rule of thumb. At the end of the day, you really have to run the math and have a plan to see what does it look like, because the piece that's not being looked at there is, well, what other sources of income do I have? You've got Social Security at least. If you're doing that, then if you needed $100,000 and it was all coming from investments at 4%, 2.5 million. But you're going to have Social Security. If you're married, a spouse potentially have Social Security at least half of yours as a spousal. Is there a pension involved? So there's all these other pieces that come into play, and the more outside income sources you have, the lower that dollar amount is that you need to save to meet what you need in retirement.
So it's not quite as daunting as it might sound. You go, because we've talked on the show about, $1 million. I gotta, you're supposed to have $1 million or whatever, this arbitrary number. I was like, well, how in the world am I going to get to 2.5 if I can't even get to 1? So
right.
I think I know where you're going to go with this, but the 80% rule that you need 80% of your income in retirement. So if you made 100,000, you only need 80 kind of thing.
Again, it's a great place to start, right? As kind of an estimate, because if you have no other idea, then start with that. Because usually, I mean, in retirement, there is going to be some loss of some expenditures you would have. If you had two cars because you're both working, maybe you drop back to one, maybe not. I was just having a discussion with a client the other day that they were talking that back and forth, and she's like, well, wait a minute, what if you want to golf and I want to go, like, well, yeah, well, there's Uber, right? You can do that.
My wife would be, there is no way on earth she would give up her car.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have to look at that. But again, it's one of those rules of thumb.
All right, so we're playing some rules here. Are they legit or full of bull, if you will? So the rule of 72. Now, those first ones there, those were all kind of the rules of thumb. Now, this one's more mathematical. The rule of 72, what's that?
Yeah, so this is a mathematical formula. And basically, all it's doing is helping you do some easy math to say, I want to double my assets that I have and earn X percent. How long is it going to take? So take 72 divided by whatever you think you're going to earn as a percentage will give you the years. So if I think I can earn 6% on my money, then I know, 12 years, I can double it. So that's kind of the rule there.
Okay.
So
legit?
Yeah, yeah, it's legit. It's just math. It's a mathematical rule. There's nothing to argue there. It's a good kind of a guesstimate of, trying to think of how long I need to hit my number. If my number's $1 million and I'm have this amount today, and I'm just not going to have any more money going in just through earnings at 6% or whatever your number is. It'll help you get a picture of how long is it going to take to double that.
Versus that point. Kind of sliding scale of the 4% rule. That's a little bit what's got more concrete to it. Okay. The rule of 2.67. No idea, but I'm guessing it's inflation based.
Yes. Yeah. So this is, again, looking at income versus inflation, over that 25 year in the future. So understanding, what my income is today, and then what do I need
to overtake
for inflation, this many years down the road.
Is 2.67, if that's the inflation rate, is that accurate? That's not probably.
Well, it's to me, that's around the number we use today, because that's the 20-year average right now.
Okay.
Obviously that changes. But inflation is one of those targets that you've got to plan for in retirement. Mm-hmm. Again, I would overestimate than underestimate.
Yeah.
Today, 2.67 is probably on the low side.
Okay, that's what I was going to. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
But I mean, inflation moves in cycles just like interest rates do, right? So they kind of follow each other. So bond interest rates were at one of the lowest points in history. It can't get much lower than where it's at right now. Inflation is pretty low too, on most things. I mean, there's always some of those outliers like toilet paper and hand sanitizer and all those crazy things that have high demands and webcams like we talked about. But
I don't know, Phil, you gotta be careful with sayings like that. It could be a meme, right? You see those memes where it says,
that's right,
hold my beer. Can't get much lower than that. And doing it says, hold my beer, always. You never know. There's always
never know. Yeah,
never know.
So, but inflation is one of those pieces you got to account for.
Yeah.
So,
we'll share some info with some of our listeners here in the Michigan area if you haven't seen other news, just to kind of share how interesting 2020 is. Kind of to that point we were just laughing about. The weird thing that happened in Iowa. I don't know if you saw that about a week or two ago. Basically, it's a hurricane without a hurricane. They call it like a tornado or something.
That was crazy. That right. Devastating. Yeah.
Devastating. And I've got clients in Iowa as well that I talk to, and I'm like, never heard of that. And they're like, neither had we.
Yeah. Didn't expect that. Didn't plan for that.
So,
or the insurance companies didn't either. So
2020 and Mother Nature said, how about this one?
That's right. We're going to try this one on you.
Yeah. Did you have that on your bingo card for the year? All right. So we're going to finish off with our final one here, folks, full of rules, full of bull or legit or not. And it's our old friend, the rule of 100.
Yeah, so the rule of 100 is getting to that asset allocation at a really high level between stocks and bonds. How much should I have invested? And basically, it's taking 100 minus whatever your age is, should be about the amount you would have invested in stocks, let's say. So if you're retiring at 60, then about 40% stocks, 60% in bonds gives you that allocation. So it's, gives you an idea as you age, then obviously the number in the stock goes lower. The number in the bond portion goes higher, more conservative as you age. So a good rule of thumb, good place to start. But, really it comes down to understanding what you're comfortable with. Maybe based on this, that 40%, 60% allocation is what it says you should be, but you're not comfortable with that because that has a lot of volatility.
Yep.
Which then that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and
what the rule says. So.
Right. It's that one. This one definitely is back to a rule of thumb, and I think it definitely gives you a simple place to look at.
Right.
When you go to sit down with an advisor and say, okay, well, I know that the rule of 100 says that I should be here, but I just don't feel good there. Where do you have me? If you're already working with an advisor, you can ask that question. Hey, how much do I have at risk, or whatever the case might be? Or if you're shopping for a new advisor, that kind of thing. It's a bit maybe outdated in my thought. I don't see,
yeah,
Phil, but
like absolutely outdated because it's you've got to look at the big picture of everything. And I mean, this is getting into the risk tolerance is one of my favorite discussions with clients because they're all over the board, and my favorite one is always, well, what should I be? I'm like, I don't know. This is a personal preference. I'll tell you whether I think it's too high or too low, and if we need to make adjustments, but
right.
I don't know. What are you comfortable with? What can you bear?
Well, the math
is a good place to start.
Like maybe if your math says, you need to have 30%, in the market, let's say, to attain your goals, but you're just not comfortable with that, then you got to look for other solutions, right?
Correct. Yeah. And it's one of those, there's two sides of risk that you have to look at. Number one, what are you comfortable with? How much can you bear? And the other one is how much you need to take.
Yeah.
And I see people on both sides of that equation, some that are taking way more risk than what they even need to, because they don't, they've got enough accumulated. They don't need to take that risk. So what's the end game? Why do you want to take the risk? Is it to grow the pot bigger, to pass on to the kids? Great. Then let's plan for that. And there's other ways to do that too. But if it's way beyond your comfort level, or just the opposite, where you need to take a little bit more risk than what you're comfortable with. So let's help position that the right way so you're not going to get harmed by it. During retirement. So
if you're sitting,
it's just a great discussion to have to make sure you look at both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're sitting there watching the stock ticker every day, then you're not in the place you want to be at. That's for sure.
You're going to miss retirement. It's going to blow by you because you're going to be paying attention to what's going on in the market and the elections and all the other pieces, and so.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you work with an advisor, so they can do
that
worrying for you. So reach out to Phil, folks. We're going to wrap it up. So hopefully you enjoyed this quick little rules of thumb. Well, I guess rules in general, financial.
Rules in general, yeah.
Rules in general, so whether they were legit or full of it. Reach out to Phil if you got any questions. Before you take any action, as always, I like to say that 248-888-7530. I'll put it on the screen for those watching. 248-888-7530 is how you get in contact with him. Let him know you want to chat. You can reach out to him and let him know. You can find him on philstaxhacks.com. That is philstaxhacks.com. While you're there, subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Google or Spotify or any other number of platforms that are out there. We'd certainly appreciate the support. Share it with someone who might benefit from the message as well. Again, it's philstaxhacks.com. All right, folks, stay safe and sane. We'll see you next time right here on Phil's Tax Hacks and Other Retirement Facts with Phil Putnam.
Investment advisory services offered through AFS Wealth Management. The content of this program is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. Investments and/or investment strategies involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. There is no assurance that any investment strategy will achieve its objectives.